With my last £10, 2 hours on the clock, if the game can't prove itself, it's finished, refunded forever. Welcome to Refund Review. This game has been everywhere on my feed recently, so I figured I'd spend the big bucks and see if the game is actually worth it. But to stay in Steam's refund guidelines, I only have 2 hours. But to see if it's worth it, I'm going to be ranking the game on 5 different aspects: the gameplay, story, graphics, sound and music, and the price. So let's get into this. So booting up Megabonk, the first thing I see is this medieval pixel art menu. It's pretty simple, but quite a nice theme. But then I hit play and get to pick between 2 characters. So the first 2 characters I had to pick was either the fox or the knight, and because I love anything medieval themed and Skyrim so much, I obviously chose the fox. But then right away, the gameplay instantly made me feel like Risk of Rain meets Vampire Survivors. And this is kind of true. I mean, it was confirmed by the dev in his devlog video. And you can visually tell this in the game. You've got the gems, shrines, and random bosses, but so do many other games that aren't even roguelike. So I'm not going to make any assumptions yet. But here's the thing, even though it does seem like Vampire Survivors, it is not a copy-paste. Like, Megabonk actually sneaks some unique twists into the game that caught my eye. But now let's dive deeper into each part of the gameplay, starting off with the character. So when I first loaded in, I had the 2 from earlier, the fox and the knight, and later I unlocked Clanks, but let's just start with the first 2. So the fox was my first pick. With its abilities, it's fast, range, and has a little fire wand which allows me to kind of stay out of combat. At first, I loved this character. I thought I could just upgrade it so no monsters would ever go near me, but then I played the knight. And honestly, the knight feels instantly better. This was probably because it did remind me of the Vampire Survivors Sword Slash. He literally had the exact same but in 3D. But the best part about it, it was strong, wide range, and it carried me way further than the fox did. But after playing this game for about an hour and a half, I finally got to unlock Clanks, a medieval cowboy with a revolver, and he was super fun early game, but not really late game because I didn't even make it there with him. I'm probably just that bad. It's probably not even the game, it's just a skill issue on my side. But at the same time, the revolver he does use is only a single shot, and it doesn't hit surrounding targets just like the knight does. But I do find it quite cool that they all have their own different types of abilities. Like for the knight, he has a lot more luck than the fox, but this could be due to the fact that he is more melee than ranged. And now visually, I want to say they are all satisfying, but the knight especially. He looks badass and goofy at the same time. The pixel art effects just does wonders. But there is a downside, and for me only one. This being how long it takes to unlock characters. After 2 hours, I only got 1 new one. I mean, it's good for replayability, but it can feel very grindy. So now we know everything about personal character stats, how can we upgrade them? Well, there's only 3 ways to power up your character. This is through shrines, gems, and chests. Shrines you just charge up and you'll get stat offers. Then gems is basically the currency to level you up to either choose a new weapon or new upgrades. Then finally the chest, which you can either find scattered around the map, but you have to pay with gold. And to get gold, you need to kill enemies, or if you kill mini bosses or normal bosses, you might get a free chest from that. So there's only 3 upgrade systems, and I love how they work, but at first it can feel so overwhelming. It's honestly like brain rot, but just for me. It's just boosting my dopamine receptors on Megabonk instead of doing it on TikTok, so I'm happy with that. And while at times you can feel ridiculously overpowered, the game always finds a way to even it out. So never think you're overpowered, because even if you're struggling with a mini boss, that's the game just telling you to get stronger before embarrassing yourself dying to the main boss. It forces you into a nice little loop of strategy, upgrade or die, which I kind of enjoy. But it does give you that false hope that you're overpowered, but give it a few minutes and you'll find out you're definitely not. And thinking about it, there is one other way to unlock items, and this is the Shady Shop guy. The first time I found him, I thought he was going to join me on my quest or become some cool mentor character. But no, he's just a sketchy merchant who sells me decent items, so I won't complain too much. So like I said, there's quite a few things you can unlock. Starting with the shrines, these basically let you pick one of 3 stat upgrades, and these stats can range from health, damage, jump, move speed, you name it. And honestly, having your stat menu sitting there on the right the whole time is such an underrated feature. Then you've got the gems, and once you've collected enough to level up, you can choose one of 3 offers between a new weapon, item, or totem upgrades. These can completely change your run. Like imagine giving a knight a fire staff, suddenly you've got a melee and ranged weapon in one package, or you can even get a banana, which is way funnier than I expected. Next are the chests, and these are basically slot machines, giving the same vibe as Vampire Survivors. When you open it, the color tells you the rarity, and whatever pops out goes straight into your build. Sometimes you get something incredible, and sometimes you get the most useless thing, but the gambling part makes it so satisfying to me. And like I said earlier, at first it's overwhelming, but after a few runs it clicks. There's enough variety to keep things fresh, whether you go melee, range, or in-base the banana meta. Like, the freedom is great, but the RNG side can screw you over. If the game decides you're not getting any powerful weapons, then yeah, good luck. But hey, that's roguelikes, I guess. So the real question is, how does all this progression hold up against the enemies? Well, in my opinion, I love the monsters in Megabonk. They scale perfectly with your character, starting from goblins to some weird small bug things, all the way to chaotic bosses. And thanks to all the upgrades, it never feels unfair, just challenging enough to make the surviving feel challenging. The mini-bosses are also a nice touch, but honestly, they're just bigger versions of normal enemies. But the bosses, on the other hand, they bring actual challenge with clever attack patterns that keep you on your toes. Early on, the game can feel very intense, with moments where death seems inevitable, but when you have that moment and you survive, it's insanely satisfying. And I do want to mention that sometimes enemies can end up piling on top of each other, which makes the chaos absolutely hilarious and ridiculous. I just love the humor in this game. Now, Megabonk isn't just chaos in-game, it's got some interesting stuff outside of the action too. First up, the challenges. You can grind them or be like me and accidentally complete them to earn free silver, a small but satisfying reward. And then you have the shop. This is where the silver comes in. At first, I did worry that I was going to be a pay to win, but no microtransactions, thank goodness for indie devs. But the shop is just a way to spend your earned silver on unlocking new things, which is quite nice. But then you have the real game changer, the unlock menu. Here you see how to get every item, weapon, totem, and character. Higher rarity items cost more silver, so there is a real incentive to complete the challenges. This system massively boosts replayability. Grinding challenges is fun, but chasing 100% unlocks is what keeps you coming back. Honestly, it's all executed so well, I've got zero complaints. Well, apart from one, it's the fact that Megabonk isn't even multiplayer yet. And if it did, this would honestly boost the game even more. I mean, the leaderboard helps a bit for some multiplayer competitive side, but chaos with friends would be next level. Hopefully the dev adds this one day. But overall for me, the gameplay is in the heart of Megabonk. It's addictive, chaotic, and makes you want more. I found myself trying to beat every map and boss, even if I couldn't get past the first one in my first 2 hours of playing. I know, I'm bad. But Megabonk's goofy, distinct style keeps you coming back. It does lean into the inspiration of Risk of Rain and Vampire Survivors, but unlike most copycats, it pulls it off, though the influences are sometimes too obvious. But all things considered, the gameplay is amazing, so I'm gonna give this section a 7.5 out of 10. The story in Megabonk, well, there isn't one, and honestly, that's fair enough for an indie game. That said, I think this game could have a really cool lore angle, like Risk of Rain, which surprisingly has a deep backstory for a roguelike. Megabonk could easily let their players imagine why these characters are fighting through portals and defeating bosses. Let the community spin for their own wild theories. I reckon it fit perfectly. But whether the dev adds a story later, I'm not sure. But if they do try, their expectations are going to be so high. So it's kind of good that for now there's nothing. But what that also means is, sadly, for this section, I'm going to have to give it a 0 out of 10. Megabonk's graphics are goofy, charming, and clearly show the developer's humor, but also with a hint to Vampire Survivors. The dev showed that he made the graphics all by himself, turning smooth 3D models into the pixel art, creating a surprisingly but satisfying retro fantasy aesthetic. Like, every character matches the pixel style, but yet they each stand out, making the visuals so satisfying to play with. But I will say, some of the characters just look like they would not belong in the same game. But I do want to give an honourable mention to the feature art before you open the game, it just looks so cool. But now diving into specific graphics, firstly let's start with the UI. It fits the game perfectly, pixelated, colourful, and consistent with the PS2-esque vibe. Like, everything matches, like the settings, item boxes, and even the Discord invite button, they all match the style. But the one thing that doesn't is the game title font. This stands out the most, but in a good way, showing that the pixel art was carefully crafted with smooth 3D assets. And the UI in-game is basically a pixelated version of Risk of Rain's UI. It's simple, clear, and never distracting, but there were some moments where I got really confused, especially the part where it tells you how many coins you need for the next chest. I thought that was all the coins I had, not how much I need. Now for the maps. I only tried 2 of the maps, but they worked well. They had simple layouts with castles, slopes, and enough detail to make the world feel alive. The pixel style was mostly consistent, though some objects like the trees and castles that they don't match fully, the pixels are a bit off. And then the second map, well, I think it was just a first one but with a purple filter. It's simple, but it did add some atmosphere. Another thing in the maps I want to mention, which I think was heavily inspirational from Risk of Rain, is the battle arena / portal you go through. I can't lie, they look the exact same, just one's more pixelated. And it's the same with the shrines, but the thing is, that's not a big deal because any shrine in any game can look similar, though here it was quite plain, except from the stone head like Easter Island thing. That looked awesome. Now for the characters, and I only got to play 3. They all look great, but the knight stands out with a simple design that fits perfectly into the medieval scenery amongst all the broken castles. The other 2 aren't bad, but I feel like they're quite basic in comparison, so there's not too much graphics going on here. But I did see a short on YouTube of the dev making character 120 from Squid Games, so that looks pretty sick. And as for the monsters, many are awesome. Skeletons are probably the best, they fit the theme perfectly. Then you have the goblins, which look goofy and charming, but some enemies like the weird green and black exploding things, they just feel a bit random and rushed. Overall, the enemy designs are cool, though a few are just weird and simple. Now for the item and chest art, and these are mostly fantastic, with its incredible chest animations and detailed designs reminiscent of Minecraft enchantment books. It just looks amazing, but I will be honest, some items are more pixelated than the characters, which kind of breaks the consistency. But still, everything being pixel art keeps it cohesive, and the designs are fun and visually satisfying. Overall, Megabonk nails a unique and charming pixel art style. The characters, monsters, maps, items and UI all mostly fit together, with some minor inconsistencies, like some items being more pixelated than others. But it still works. The feature art and chest animations are especially impressive, and the overall style makes the game feel enjoyable, nostalgic and satisfying to play. That said, some maps and enemies feel a bit basic, and a few design choices aren't perfectly consistent. So for this section, I'm gonna have to give it a 5 out of 10. Now starting off with the music, I was surprised to learn that Megabonk's OST has 29 tracks, many being character themes which I didn't really get to hear because I only had 2 hours and 3 characters. But I want to show you guys what songs I've listened to and that I think are the best in the game. Like to start off, you have Wednesday Morning Bonk. This has to be one of the best in the OST. It's a simple arcade melody you can nod your head to and really get immersed in the game. And then there's Castle Bonkia, which I guess is an inspiration from Castlevania. I mean, it does have that medieval feel to it. Next is No Bonk No Life, an amazing track that really captures the arcade nostalgia. And finally, the final Bonk, which has a very rock feel to it. But there's not too much to say about these songs, they just give that nostalgic feeling, but they aren't the best tracks I've heard on an OST. I gave a few examples, but the other songs I've either haven't heard or just found very basic. So out of all these songs, the soundtrack kinda nails that retro arcade feel, which fits the chaos perfectly. Some tracks can be over the top or a bit busy, but when you're in those intense battles, it actually works. And that said, the songs can get repetitive over time, but overall the OST is solid and adds a lot to the game's energy. So for this section, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Some of Megabonk's sound effects are genuinely satisfying, like the chest opening and reward sounds. And when it happens, the game pauses, audio cuts off, and the casino style chime makes the unboxing feel so exciting. Definitely hits that gambling dopamine spot. Well, for me, because, you know, I'm a bit of a gambler myself. That said, some of the sound effects can get annoying, like the high-pitched coin sound effect when collecting gems. It fits in perfectly for the pixel style, but happens way too often and can overwhelm all the other audio. Then the weapon sounds, I mean they're fine, it's just when your sword slashes and attacks. It's fairly straightforward, but something out of like a free sound library. I also wanted to mention the enemies' noises, but I genuinely could not hear if they had one or not because the gem sound effects was too loud. Overall, apart from the chest and upgrade sounds, most sound effects don't add much impact or uniqueness. And to be fair, it doesn't sound like there's many. A death sound effect or more character cues would have been nice. But because there's not that much, I'm gonna give the sound effect a 3 out of 10. That means for this entire section, I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 10. Now finally the price section, but before we get in, I do want to mention a lot of indie games seem to have this weird price trend of either £8.50 or £16.75. It's always just somewhere in that range, and Megabonk hits the lower end at £8.50 for me. And for a game of this size, it's not a bad price. The content isn't massive, but the replayability adds a lot of value. Even with just a few maps and characters, I could easily see myself sinking 10 plus hours into this game, experimenting with different builds, characters and strategies. That said, like most roguelites, it does start to feel repetitive after a while. After trying out multiple characters, weapons, and stat combinations, some runs can feel a bit too similar. But hopefully in the future, if I unlock more maps and additional characters, or even extra environmental variety with really boosted value. But still, considering what you get for the amount of content it can provide, Megabonk is still worth it. But personally, I'm gonna give this section a 6.5 out of 10. Now you're probably thinking, we decide if we refund it or keep it. But before we do that, let's see the overall score of this game. So gameplay got a 7.5 out of 10, story getting a 0 out of 10, graphics getting a 5 out of 10, sound and music getting a 3 out of 10, and finally the price getting a 6.5 out of 10, which means overall this game got a 23 out of 50. So yeah, not as high as I expected. The game was actually enjoyable, but I think the gameplay carried most of it. So even though it got 23 out of 50, will I still refund it? Well, the answer to that is no, I won't. This game was genuinely so fun, and I think I'm going to keep on playing it even after I complete this video. I'm excited to see new updates and hopefully the game gets a story at some point, but who knows. But apart from that, please subscribe and comment what game you want to see next.